The champagne glasses clinked around me like tiny bells. The conference room buzzed with laughter and music. Then my boss, Richard, grabbed the microphone. "I want to make a special toast," he said, grinning. My stomach tightened. He called my name. Everyone turned. "Let's talk about dedication," he continued. "Sarah here stayed late every night this quarter. Unfortunately, dedication doesn't always equal results." He laughed. The room went silent. He listed my missed deadlines, my performance issues, private details from my review. Heat flooded my face. People stared at their shoes. He raised his glass. "Let's all resolve to be more like me this year." Some laughed nervously. I stood frozen, humiliated. When our eyes met, I saw it clearly. This wasn't alcohol talking. This was planned. This was personal. Something inside me shifted from shame to something colder. If you're watching this video, please subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my story from. 6 months earlier, everything felt different. I'd joined the marketing team excited and eager. Richard seemed like a good boss at first. Friendly, approachable, full of praise. I worked hard. Stayed late fixing presentations. Covered for teammates. Ran reports on weekends. I believed if I did excellent work, I'd be recognized. That's what they tell you, right? Work hard and good things follow. I trusted the system. I trusted him. My colleagues seemed to like me. Projects ran smoothly. I thought I was building something solid. A career, a reputation, a future. Looking back, I was building someone else's success. I just didn't know it yet. The signs were there, small at first. My name missing from an email chain. A meeting happening without me. But I brushed it off. Everyone's busy, I told myself. The first real crack appeared during the quarterly presentation. I'd spent 3 weeks developing a new client acquisition strategy. Research, data analysis, projected ROI, everything. Richard asked to review it the night before. "Just want to make sure it's polished," he said. The next morning, I sat in the conference room with the executive team. Richard stood at the front with my slides. He presented every idea, every data point, every recommendation. He called it his vision for growth. The executives nodded, impressed. They praised his innovative thinking. He soaked it in, never once mentioning my name. I waited for him to credit me. He never did. After the meeting, the VP of Sales shook his hand. "Brilliant work, Richard." I stood there invisible. Later, someone from another department congratulated me privately. Then she whispered, "Why didn't he mention you?" That question haunted me. I mentioned it to Jennifer, a senior analyst who'd been there 5 years. She pulled me into an empty office. Her face was serious. "He does this," she said quietly. "Takes credit, builds himself up, makes others small." I asked why nobody said anything. She looked away. "People have tried. It doesn't end well. He has relationships with leadership. If you push back, he'll come for you." I didn't want to believe her. Maybe she was bitter. Maybe she didn't work as hard. I convinced myself I could outwork the problem. If I just did better work, undeniable work, he'd have to recognize me. I threw myself into the next project even harder. 2 weeks later, I noticed Jennifer stopped making eye contact with me in meetings. My workload increased dramatically. More reports, tighter deadlines, weekend requests. But something strange happened. The more I did, the less visible I became. Meetings I used to attend happened without me. "We've got it covered," Richard would say. My ideas got implemented, but I'd hear about them secondhand. Feedback became vague and cold. "You need to show more initiative," he'd say after I'd just worked 70 hours. "Leadership needs to see strategic thinking." But he never explained what that meant. Every conversation left me confused and anxious. I started doubting myself. Maybe I wasn't as good as I thought. Maybe I was missing something. The confidence I'd started with slowly eroded. Then I got an email. My year-end review was scheduled 2 weeks later than everyone else's. The review happened in Richard's office on a Friday afternoon. He had a folder prepared. His face was professionally concerned. He went through my performance systematically. Every example he used was twisted. A deadline I missed because he changed requirements the night before became inability to adapt. A client meeting where I asked clarifying questions became lack of confidence. A project where I flagged risks that later proved accurate became negativity. I tried explaining context. He cut me off. "I'm not interested in excuses." My hands shook. I left that office shaken but kept my composure. Walking to my car, clarity hit me. This wasn't about performance. This was about control. That night, I created a folder on my personal laptop. I titled it Documentation. I saved my first email just in case. December arrived with holiday decorations and forced cheer. The New Year party invitation went out company-wide. I considered skipping it. Then Richard stopped by my desk. "You're coming to the party, right?" he asked. It wasn't really a question. Leadership wants to see team unity. It's important you're there. Something about his tone felt off. Too insistent. Too planned. I nodded. Of course. He smiled and walked away. Later that week, I overheard him on the phone. "Yes, make sure HR attends," he said. "It's important we have everyone there." My stomach tightened. Why would he specifically want HR at a party? I pushed the thought away. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe Jennifer's warning had gotten in my head. But deep down I knew. Something was coming. The party started at 6. The conference room was decorated with gold streamers and balloons. Music played from someone's laptop. People mingled with plastic wine glasses. I stayed near the back, talking to coworkers from other departments. Richard worked the room. He was loud, animated, laughing too much. But I noticed he wasn't drinking. His glass stayed full. He kept glancing at me. Every time I looked up, his eyes were there. Watching. Waiting. Around 7, people started giving toasts. Funny stories, thank yous, New Year wishes. The energy was light. Then Richard moved toward the microphone. The room quieted. He tapped the mic twice. Cleared his throat. Smiled. My heart started pounding. I didn't know why yet. I just knew. "I want to make a special toast," Richard began. My name came next. All eyes turned to me. He talked about dedication and hard work. It sounded positive at first. Then his tone shifted. Unfortunately, dedication doesn't always equal results. He listed missed deadlines I didn't actually miss. Mentioned performance issues from my review, private details that should have stayed private. He made jokes. Some people laughed nervously. Most stayed silent. He twisted a project delay he'd caused and blamed me publicly. "Let's all resolve to be more like me this year," he finished, raising his glass. A few people clapped weakly. Most stared at the floor. My face burned. My throat closed. I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Across the room, someone held up their phone. They were recording. Not me. Someone else had seen what this was. I left 10 minutes later. Nobody stopped me. I walked to my car on autopilot. Sat in the driver's seat. The parking lot was dark and quiet. I waited for tears. They didn't come. Instead, I felt something colder settle in my chest. Clarity. Pure, sharp clarity. This wasn't about my performance. This was about him needing to feel bigger by making me smaller. He'd planned it. Chosen the party, the public setting, the timing. He wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone. And he'd succeeded. But something had shifted. The shame I'd expected to feel transformed into something else. Resolve. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. The message read, "You didn't deserve that." I stared at it. Then another message came through. This one had an attachment. The video arrived from a coworker named Marcus. He'd recorded the whole speech. "Thought you might need this," his message said. Over the next 2 hours, more messages came. Emails I'd never seen, calendar invites I wasn't included in, screenshots of conversations. People were sending me evidence. Quietly, carefully, they were showing me I wasn't alone. I opened each file, organized them chronologically. A pattern emerged. Richard had done this before. To Jennifer. To someone named Tom who'd left 2 years ago. To others who'd disappeared from the company quietly. He had a system. Build people up, use their work, then tear them down before they became a threat. He kept himself essential by making everyone else look incompetent. I stared at my laptop screen. This wasn't just my story. This was bigger. And I had proof. Monday morning, I considered quitting. Writing an email, walking away, never looking back. It would be easier. Cleaner. But something stopped me. If I left quietly, he'd do this to someone else. He'd keep doing it because nobody ever made it stop. I scheduled a meeting with HR. Not to complain. Not to file a formal grievance yet. Just to ask questions. "I wanted to understand the policy on performance feedback," I said calmly. "And public discussions of employee reviews." The HR manager, Linda, shifted in her seat. Her eyes changed. She knew something. "Why do you ask?" she said carefully. I described the party incident factually, without emotion. She took notes. Her jaw tightened. "Has anyone else experienced similar situations?" I asked. She paused too long. "I can't discuss other employees." But her face told me everything. They already knew something was wrong. I returned to work the next day calm and professional. I smiled at Richard in the hallway. Said good morning. Asked about his weekend. He looked confused. Suspicious. He'd expected me to quit or cry or confront him. My composure unsettled him. In our team meeting, he tried to provoke me. Made a joke about actually meeting deadlines now. I smiled politely. Took notes. Said nothing. His frustration grew. That afternoon, he called me into his office. "I'm assigning you the Patterson account," he said. Patterson was our most demanding client. They need a complete strategy overhaul by Friday. It was Tuesday. 3 days for a month-long project. He was setting me up to fail. I looked him in the eye. "I'll get it done," I said. His smile faltered. He'd expected me to push back, to complain. Instead, I left his office and got to work. I worked around the clock. Not because I had to prove anything to Richard, but because I was building my case. I documented every instruction he gave me. Every email, every verbal request, every changing requirement. When he moved deadlines or added scope, I confirmed it in writing. Just to make sure I understand correctly, I'd write. By Thursday night, I had the strategy complete. It was flawless. I'd anticipated every question, backed every recommendation with data. Friday morning, I submitted it early. Richard reviewed it silently. He looked frustrated. By noon, leadership called a meeting to discuss the Patterson proposal. They were impressed. The VP asked me to present. Richard sat in the corner. When they asked how I pulled it off so quickly, I explained my process clearly. Then I mentioned, Richard provided excellent guidance throughout. Leadership looked at him. "Walk us through your approach, Richard." Richard stumbled. He contradicted himself twice, mixed up data points I'd used, and couldn't explain the methodology. The executives exchanged glances. I said nothing, just sat there taking notes, face neutral. The meeting ended uncomfortably. Afterward, Richard pulled me aside. "You made me look bad in there," he hissed. I met his eyes calmly. "I just answered their questions," I said. "You told me to be more strategic." I was. He had no response. Over the next week, similar moments kept happening. He'd claim credit for something, then couldn't explain it under scrutiny. Each time, I stayed quiet. Each time, leadership noticed. The more silent I remained, the more his anxiety grew. He started making mistakes. Defensive. Paranoid. People were talking. Not loudly, but enough. And my silence scared him more than any accusation could. HR began conducting quiet interviews with staff. People were called in one by one, casually, just checking in on team dynamics. I knew because coworkers started looking at Richard differently. Carefully. Jennifer started making eye contact with me again. Marcus nodded when we passed in the hallway. Richard grew increasingly defensive in meetings. He snapped at people. Interrupted constantly. Blamed others for small mistakes. The calm, charismatic boss from months ago was cracking. Leadership noticed. I watched it all unfold quietly, documenting everything, staying professional. Then one afternoon, Richard appeared at my desk. "We need to talk," he said tightly. He walked toward the conference room without waiting. I grabbed my notebook and followed. Inside, he closed the door. His face was red. His hands shook slightly. "What did you tell HR?" he demanded. I stayed calm. "I answered their questions honestly," I said. "About what?" he pressed. "About my experience here. About the party. About my work." His jaw clenched. "You need to be careful about misremembering things," he said slowly. "Misunderstandings can damage careers. Yours." It was a threat. Clear and direct. I looked at him steadily. "Could you put that in writing?" I asked. "I want to make sure I understand your concerns correctly." His face changed. Anger mixed with panic. I'm not," he stammered. "You're twisting my words." I just waited. He stared at me, realizing he'd made a mistake. "Forget it," he snapped. He stormed out, leaving the door open. I sat there for a moment, then pulled out my phone. I typed a detailed summary of the conversation while it was fresh, including the time, location, and his exact words. I sent it to my personal email. Rumors started spreading. I was being phased out, people whispered. My projects were being reassigned. Richard was building a case to fire me. I heard it from multiple sources. Part of me felt defeated. Maybe I'd lose this battle. Maybe speaking up would cost me everything. I started preparing for life after this job. Updated my resume. Reached out to my network. Applied to a few positions quietly just in case. I told myself I'd be okay either way. I'd learned something valuable. I'd stopped shrinking. Then one Tuesday morning, I received an email from a recruiter. A competitor company was hiring for a senior position. Better title, better pay, better culture. They'd heard about my work through industry contacts. Would I be interested in talking? I stared at the email. Then HR sent a meeting request. Subject line, final discussion. My heart pounded. The job offer came through 3 days later. The salary was 15% higher. The role had real leadership responsibility. They wanted me to start in a month. I didn't accept immediately. I told them I needed to finalize some things first. The HR meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. I arrived early with a folder containing everything I'd documented. Emails, calendars, the video, witness statements people had sent me. Linda was there, along with someone from legal and a senior director I'd never met before. They asked me to explain what happened, start to finish. I spoke calmly, factually, chronologically. I showed evidence for everything. They listened without interrupting. When I finished, the director asked one question. What outcome are you looking for? I paused. I could ask for Richard to be fired. For compensation. For a promotion. Instead, I said something simple. I want a clean exit and good references. They exchanged glances. They told me there would be a meeting the following week. All parties present. We need to hear all sides, Linda explained. I agreed. The weekend passed slowly. Monday arrived. I walked into the conference room to find Richard already seated, along with HR, legal, and 2 executives. The atmosphere was tense. Linda opened by explaining the purpose of the meeting to address concerns about team dynamics and leadership conduct. Then she played the video from the party. Richard's face went pale as his voice filled the room, mocking me publicly, sharing private performance details. When it ended, silence hung heavy. Linda read excerpts from emails showing credit theft, contradictory instructions, and timeline manipulations. She laid out patterns spanning years. Richard tried interrupting. This is taken out of context, he said. I was trying to motivate. Let us finish, the executive said firmly. When they were done, Richard had no defense left. Then they asked others to speak. Jennifer was called in. She described her experience 3 years earlier. Marcus explained what he'd witnessed. Another colleague shared a similar pattern. Each story painted the same picture. A boss who built himself up by tearing others down. Who took credit systematically. Who punished anyone who threatened his position. The executives' faces grew harder with each testimony. Richard tried to deflect. He blamed stress, miscommunication, said people were misunderstanding his intentions. Then he tried blaming me. Sarah has been difficult to manage, he said. Resistant to feedback, defensive about criticism. The executive cut him off. We've reviewed her actual performance data, she said coldly. Her work is consistently excellent. The only negative feedback comes from you. Richard's face crumbled. I need to speak with you outside, Linda said to him. He stood on shaking legs and left. After Richard left, the room felt different. Lighter. The executive turned to me. We apologize, she said. This should have been addressed sooner. We failed you. I nodded, accepting it. Linda returned alone. She sat down and folded her hands. What do you want, Sarah? She asked again. I could have asked for anything. His job. A promotion. Money. Instead, I pulled out the offer letter from the competitor. I've accepted another position, I said. I'd like to leave on good terms with positive references. That's all. They looked surprised. We'd like you to stay, the executive said. We can offer you Richard's role, a significant raise, assurances this culture will change. I considered it. The vindication would feel good. But I knew the truth. This place had let it happen for years. I appreciate that, I said. But I think it's time for a fresh start. I gave 2 weeks' notice the next day. It was professional, clean, and final. Coworkers stopped by my desk to thank me quietly. You did what we couldn't, Jennifer said. You spoke up. Marcus brought me coffee. That took courage, he said. I didn't feel courageous. I just felt clear. On my last day, I packed my desk while Richard worked from home. He'd been there the whole week, but we never spoke. No farewell, no acknowledgement. Just absence where someone used to be. My going-away gathering was small but warm. People shared kind words. As I walked out with my box of belongings, I saw Richard in the parking lot. He was getting into his car. He looked smaller somehow. Diminished. Our eyes met briefly. He looked away first. I drove home and didn't look back. Weeks later, I heard through Jennifer what happened next. Richard was demoted. Stripped of his management role, placed on probation, assigned to individual contributor work with no direct reports. Several people he'd managed requested transfers. Leadership launched a culture review. Exit interviews from the past 5 years were re-examined. Patterns nobody had wanted to see became undeniable. Richard tried to spin it, but people stopped protecting him. His carefully built reputation collapsed quickly once the truth came out. He'd been good at politics, at managing up, at controlling narratives. But he'd been terrible at actual leadership. And without people to hide behind, that became obvious. Then one afternoon I got a LinkedIn message. It was from Richard. My stomach tightened as I opened it. "I'm looking for new opportunities. Would you be willing to provide a reference or make an introduction?" I stared at the screen in disbelief. I read his message 3 times. He wanted my help. After everything he'd done, everything he'd said, he was asking me to help him find a new job. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part wanted to write back everything I'd held in. Instead, I wrote something simple. "I don't think I'm the right person to speak to your work. I wish you well in your search." I didn't add bitterness or anger. I didn't need to. I clicked send and closed the laptop. My new job started the following week. The office was bright, collaborative, and respectful. My boss asked my opinions and credited my ideas. Colleagues treated me like an equal. I worked hard, but I also left on time. I took lunches. I had boundaries. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Not just for what I produced, but for who I was. I didn't ruin Richard. I just stopped letting him hide. And sometimes that's the most powerful revenge of all. If this story resonated with you, please let me know in the comments. Share your own experiences. And subscribe for more stories.